All right, guys, we have John Boecklin of Bad Wolves on the line, man. How you doing today?
Good, man. How are you?
Like I said, living the dream up here in your former stomping grounds, Louisville, Kentucky, right?
That's right. Yeah, lived there for about a year and a half or so at some point in the early '90s.
Nice. Well, before we get too deep into it, man, I have to say that Bad Wolves is like the hype train on Bad Wolves is beyond insane to me. Like every time I turn around, you guys are, the Five Finger Death Punch tour is announced. You know, the unfortunate events around the zombie single, but the zombie single just kind of came out of nowhere. So I mean, it's pretty crazy these last few months for you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been sort of hard to process a little bit with the zombie release. I don't know if for those who don't know, Dolores, the owner of 11-7, Alan Kovac, he's the one who signed us. We delivered the record and he noticed we had a song Zombie on there, and he goes, "Oh, how crazy. I used to manage the Cranberries for 15 years." So he actually came up with the idea. He's like, "Why don't we call her and see if she could want to collaborate on it?" So he sent her it and she loved it. And it happens to be that she contacted us and said, "Loves it, let's do it." And it happened to be on the day she died, she was going to go record her version with us. So, they released a statement about it, and our name kind of got just attached to her death because of what she was doing that day. So that kind of spread out, and then, we were just like, well, why don't we just release it? She was going to sing it on it anyways, and then the song's doing very, very well. All the proceeds are going to her children. I know everyone says her children don't need it, but it's better going to them than us.
Right.
So, because we're not trying to, we're not trying to make money off her name.
Yeah, it would definitely be a bad look if it was a cash grab.
Yeah. So, and it's kind of like this bittersweet kind of success because it's just strange how it all happened. We would have much rather have had her on the track and released it later. And, so it kind of threw everyone into just a quick, just everything's happened really fast. So there you go. And then everyone really seems to enjoy the song. So that makes me happy.
Yeah, it's a great cover, and I like the updated lyrics that Toomey does. What part of the song was she going to end up singing? Well, do you know what her actual part was going to be?
No, no one knows. She was just going to go in and probably sing a bunch of it, of her own song, and we would probably let her and a producer decide where she was going to stick her voice in. But it never happened, so we don't know.
I mean, it's crazy too, just because the song is not, your typical song that you're going to cover. If Bad Wolves covered Master of Puppets and James Hetfield passed away, that makes a little bit more linear sense. But pulling out the Cranberries out of nowhere and then she passes away, and to be associated with all that, that's just some very odd timing.
Yeah, there's no other way you can really describe it as odd timing. It's just like, one day we're just hanging out, and then the next day, all this shit happened and our names everywhere. It was really crazy. We declined a bunch of interviews with on air with TMZ and stuff. Like people really I've never been a part of that kind of press.
Right.
Where major outlets are wanting to talk to you about something, and we're not really affiliated with her, but I think what the public got the perception that we were in the studio with her when she passed away and stuff. I think it was just a little misconstrued, and it's like I've never met her, never had a conversation with her, but people tended to think that we got to get in touch with these guys because they were there when she died, and it was just very bizarre. People kind of got the wrong idea about our relationship with her. It was just a collaboration. There was no connection, and that way, we weren't best friends or anything.
And another part of the kind of the hype train that started this all off was, Toomey being out with Five Finger Death Punch. Toomey takes over for Ivan for a few shows when Ivan is dealing with his demons, and it basically just everything that comes out of that point is Toomey Vext of Bad Wolves is filling in for Ivan of Five Finger Death Punch. So I mean, your name is being attached to so many big things so quick. It's mind-boggling to watch because I had Toomey on the show a couple of years ago before the Westfield Massacre, or I think he was maybe starting Westfield Massacre at the time. And then Doc came on the show maybe a little while, like a year later, when he was kind of in between stuff. and he was. I feel like we maybe the second time he came on, maybe played an "Eye of Tongue" song, and then. So I've been kind of watching all of this, like the pieces and parts come together, and then all of a sudden it just kind of kicked into overdrive. Man, this has been fun to watch.
Yeah, it's been very, very slow on my end. I mean, since the day I left Devil Driver, even before, actually, I take that back. I was working on this sort of project before I even left Devil Driver. So yeah, it's been a long time for me. 3.5 years it's finally come to fruition, and but things didn't really take shape with the band until Toomey joined. So in terms of you got a bunch of songs with I had worked out some stuff, but there was just a lot of unfinished vocals and all this stuff, and then Toomey came in, and it was like it became a real band.
So I told you earlier, I kind of went back and one of the interviews I listened to with you was the X-Men podcast, I guess episode 1 of the X-Men podcast with Doc Coyle. And it's kind of cool listening to you talk about kind of getting this band together. And Bad Wolves is Eye of Tongues, just kind of renamed, correct?
Correct. Yeah. It was, we all kind of came to the conclusion that, Eye of Tongues wasn't like we wanted something that was more of a stronger of a brand, easy to remember, less confusing if we were ever to be at radio, less confusing for people like Eye of Tongues. It's like we wanted something more just simple and stronger than more. Eye of Tongues definitely leans towards more of like an artistic. I think of like death metal when I hear that name. So we kind of wanted to come with a name that didn't speak metal.
Absolutely. I think Bad Wolves is a great name for this project. So kind of going back at this time of your life, you're roughly around the same age Dez was when Dez started Devil Driver. So what can you take from that, from starting Devil Driver with Dez to move on to, basically going out on your own and starting Bad Wolves and getting it to where it is today? What lessons did you learn and maybe, that you could build on?
Yeah, what did I take from that? I don't know necessarily what I take about what lessons were learned. I mean, I was a group of most of us had grown up together. We were best friends outside of Dez, we're all friends, but literally John Miller, Jeff Kendrick, all those other guys, we were all best friends growing up. And, not to focus in on a negative side of it, there's a lot of positive things I learned, but a band is a marriage. You've heard it a million times. It's cliche. It's just tough to keep that train rolling after year 12, 13, 14. When the band isn't quite consistently going upwards, once I felt like Devil Driver had peaked in popularity, I feel like. And then once it starts sliding down, the glory ride's kind of over, and then things kind of fall apart, and you're not 23 anymore, you're 35 and you're looking for security and it's not there. So things people start just kind of not working well together. And that's kind of how that situation's ended up. And that's why, it's only one. Dez and Mike Mike's not really original, but he's been there for the full ride, I'd say, in my book. But that's why it's that camp rearranged quite a bit, So taking away from that, business wise, I learned from that band what to do and what not to do, and I'm trying to run this band in a more equal manner.
Basically, starting another band after being in a successful band for so many years is very hard and very difficult. There's not a lot of examples of, the band after the band is the one, unless you're Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters, there's not a, talk about a guy that, got out of one band and landed on his feet in another. But, like I said, I kind of watched this from the outside and seeing everything. I know it's been a long process for you, but every time I turn around, I mean, even when you guys released the Learn to Live video, I mean, that video went crazy, and the comments and everybody loving it and wanting more. And obviously, I'm assuming you somehow got in touch with the Zoltan, and he's kind of taking you guys under his wing too. So it's pretty remarkable for someone to, because you always, I left a somewhat big band at one point and attempted other bands, and it's not an easy thing to do.
No, it is not. And let me tell you, man, there's not a day that went by that like I didn't doubt myself a little bit, and there's not a day that went by that if I had was in discussion with someone, whether it be a lawyer, a manager, or whatever, telling me the same thing, that dude, this it's not easy and it probably won't work out, you know. So now, how's it worked out? I don't think I could be in a better position right now than I've ever been with a second band. So I have a lot of faith right now. But yeah, it's not easy. It's very discouraging. You quickly learn that, you know, in this day and age, you're not going to get a deal based off because you got some friends at record labels and they kind of dig your music. You know, they treat you exactly how everyone else does. Like, all right, cool. What are your socials? How many have you put out a demo? How many shows have you played? Can you draw? You know, what are your streaming numbers and stuff like that? You know, it's not like, oh, well, you know, John Boecklin's got a new band. We kind of like it. Let's sign it and see what happens. Chuck some money at it. You know, it's like, so, and I kind of knew that going into it, but just for anyone else out there listening, starting a band or starting a second career in music with another band, there's no free rides really, you know, but spent a lot of my own money making the record. So did Toomey, and we put that video together and released that. And once we released Learn to Live, we kind of started grabbing people's attention because they're like, oh, this is something we can look at and it's real. And it seems to be connecting with an audience, you know?
When I originally left the band I was in, I was 23. And it's funny you're talking about how it's been about 3.5 years since you left Devil Driver up to this point. And I remember thinking back then, I was like, oh my God. It's like if I start a band now, it's going to be like 3 years. I'm going to be like 27. I mean, you know, when you're 23, 27 sounds ancient. But you know, looking back when I'm 38 now, looking backwards, it sounds that sounds like a drop in the bucket. But I guess not to dwell too much on that part on the actual you starting a band. But you said you can't be in a better position. I just keep saying that the hype train is just absolutely insane for this band, and I'm so excited for the individual members and as a collective.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited too, and like the positioning too is like has a lot to do with we're with our team in place right now is the strongest force I've ever had, including being in Devil Driver. So it's and that's not saying Rotor wasn't a force or anything, but just like 11-7 with their radio potential and our agent Ronald Boecklin at William Morris, and having 10th Street involved as management and Zoltan Bathory as management. It's kind of like just everything's firing on all cylinders here, and it's fucking crazy.
Yeah. How did you and Zoltan hook up?
Well, I've known him from the Five Finger days. But that relationship really was, for Bad Wolves was connected through Toomey. Him and Toomey have been longtime friends, and much closer. They're the closest relationship within the band. And Toomey was, approached him about it. And, through his diligence, kind of like got Zoltan on our side. And then from there, Zoltan, this is right around after like releasing that Learn to Live song, and that was what kind of really cemented Zoltan's interest in the band. And then from there, Toomey kind of just asked the right questions and asked the right way, and he agreed to manage us. And then from there, Zoltan did his job,
Yeah, he's doing a great job. I love Zoltan's story. I don't know if you've how much you've delved into how he the growing up and making a guitar out of a coffee table and all that stuff. What an insane backstory that guy has.
Yeah, that guy is fucking smart. Whatever subject he's on, I'm listening because it's just crazy. He's a crazy. There's a lot of things I'm learning about him I didn't know, of course, as he's my manager now. It's just crazy. I mean, just artwork. And he's really been helped conceptualize some of the artwork, but his drawing capabilities are crazy. He's fucking I learn something new about him every day. I'm like, you can do that too? Jesus Christ,
Nice.
It's just, he's at the top of the bill, whatever it is he's doing, and his knowledge in his hobbies is just always next level. There's casual fans of things. He's diehard. Whatever he's doing, he's all chips in. And that's the kind of dude you want as your manager,
The tour you have coming up with Shinedown Starset, I mean, obviously you can't ask for a better, basically this will be the first tour, correct?
Well, tour, yes, not shows.
Right.
We're doing, we may do some LA shows here with another band, but that's not announced yet. But we're going to do those kind of like, Carolina Rebellion, Rocklahoma, those kind of things. We're doing like 5 or 6 of those. Then that leads into our first technical tour. Yeah.
It's insane to go out in arenas as your first, the first major tour. I know you're going to be doing shows, but the first major tours are arenas with Five Finger Death Punch. Not a bad way to come out.
Are you kidding me? No. It's as good as it gets. That's why, that's like you said earlier, and this thing seems to be just kind of firing on all cylinders at this point, and I'm not stopping it, and I'm not saying no to anything when these kind of tours come your way. It's like it's a baby band's dream, so I'm living it. I'm not taking it for granted either. It's like I kind of, when you were younger, when you start getting these tours, everything is just so you're in much more awe, but things move so much quicker, and I'm really trying to stop and look around a little bit this time, and
getting a second chance to do this, and now it's kind of all falling into place. Are you able to sit back and realize what's going on? Rather than obviously jumping in a band with Dez from Cold Chamber, kind of catapult you a little bit too. But yeah,
it did. It definitely catapulted us. But also, make no mistake about it, there was a lot of hard work to be done in Devil Driver before it achieved kind of at its peak. It wasn't an easy ride, but it was definitely easier with Dez in the band because he had a huge career before that. And then jumping, for what you're saying, do I have time to look around? Like, yes, I can remember, like, it meant so much more to me than anything else hearing Learn to Live on the radio. Like, when I was driving, it came on, like I pulled over. It's such a big sense of accomplishment. Because to be honest, with Devil Driver, a lot of stuff, that getting that deal and getting to know Dez, always knowing that the deal would be in place and that it was just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
With this, it was like, I earned it, and it was like, I just acknowledged it a lot more,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Devil Driver was, once we got moving, it was like, cool, boom, do a record, go. Like, it's like, this is how it works. With this is a long build.
Let's jump back in your life a little bit. But what drew you to drums, and what drew you to guitar, bass, playing and all that stuff?
Guitar, I played first. I just had an acoustic guitar laying around. That was my aunt's, Connie, and she just let the family have it, I guess, and I would just tinker on it a little bit. And so I played that, only that, and then I heard Metallica. I didn't hear Metallica, so I don't know what it was. It was something off the Black album where I was like, man, I just want to play drums, like that's it. And then, got into that, and then simultaneously kept playing guitar, getting electric guitar at some point, and I enjoy playing guitar and writing music just as much as drums, but I'm just not a live guitar player. I've never played a live show, so I figure at this age I'm not going to start now.
Where did you grow up? I know you. We talked about your year and a half here in Louisville, but where did you mainly grow up?
Mainly in Massachusetts. That's kind of. I've definitely lived a lot of fucking places, but that's where my story kind of began. The important years of your life, and I loved it there so much. And then moved out to California and to start, do the music thing, and it took off.
Well, it seems to work out. It seems to have worked out for you. I saw on your Facebook that you're a Patriots fan. So how are you feeling with this Super Bowl?
Yeah, it was like the defense was pretty bad. It was just a weird game. It was like a ping pong game: touchdown, 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 with some real shitty field goals. And to me, it all just came down to that when Brady fumbled. And if they hadn't, they would have had that momentum, would have gone upfield, scored. and that it was kind of funny to watch. Like Bill Burr said, it was Brady showed his age when he tried to catch that double reverse pass back to him. Yeah, I'm not a psychotic Patriots fan, but yeah, it was sad to see him lose, but they've had some wins, so there you go.
Yeah, you've had a good, nice, like 17, 18-year run. I think you'll be okay with one loss here and there.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, some of my friends don't handle it so well. I don't even call them, until a couple days after the game,
I was watching some videos earlier of, basically Philadelphia burning itself down after that win.
Yeah, I just fucking weird. I don't know. I saw some guy eating horse shit. I don't even get it. I don't know. Like, all right, Philly.
I did. Yeah.
Good job.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
What was funny is they were going to burn the city down either way. They would have either rioted if they lost or they would have rioted if they won. So it was pretty much no hope for Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think they're just looking for a reason to pillage and fucking party. And I found one, so there you go. Super Bowl. It's a win-win anyways. They made it to the bowl, I guess.
Nice. Well, back to music. I actually had Dez on this show and asked him kind of the early days of Devil Driver stuff. And from your perspective, how hard was it for you guys to shed his nu metal background?
How hard was it? It was difficult. That stigma was with us wherever we went. Must have been difficult for him too, because he's just, he's a guy and everyone's just bashing him for something that did very well for him. So kind of confusing. I didn't find it confusing. I knew exactly what it was. And I think it took us till about our third record, which was like 2007 when that stuff started to subside. But yeah, we also weren't ever part of any scene in the early days. Like, we didn't we weren't part of the Kill Switch, Lamb of God, Unearth, all that, like those massive, or not all Massachusetts bands, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all those bands that came up together, they knew each other. And like, we were always outside. Like when we first did Ozfest 04, all those bands knew each other. We didn't know anybody, so we were always kind of perceived as an outsider. Some bands treated us with disrespect. Some bands treated us with respect. And so, yeah, we felt it. And, some of those bands I remember headlining over them years later, and you'd be like, there you go, buddy. And that's not being cocky. It's just like, someone isn't exactly nice to you. When the tables turn later, it's that's the real win,
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dez's voice, though, was almost more suited for the heavier stuff rather than the nu metal stuff. He still has one of my favorite screams ever.
Yeah. Dez's voice, it's kind of hard to imagine any other voice on Devil Driver stuff, I guess, Yeah, he's got a great scream. And fucking hey, there's a lot of things that could be said about our relationship, but to take a high road, that guy changed my life by inviting me to play music with him. So, that's what I would focus in on, mentioning that guy.
How did you two know each other?
I met at a bar.
Oh wow.
I had heard that he was starting a band in Santa Barbara. It was where I was living, and it's a pretty small town. And so I'd heard that he lived there, and I had heard that he was trying to start a band through a guy named Evan Pitts. So he came to a show that I was actually playing. It was like a bar/venue, and I went up to him and just hit him up like, hey, dude, I heard you're starting a band. Like, I fucking want in, that kind of thing. And we just, I don't really remember too much after that. Somehow, I don't know if we exchanged numbers. I don't know if I just communicated to him through that Evan guy. But eventually, we were hanging out, and it all worked. Yeah, we connected, and that's how that went down.
It's crazy how stuff like that works out.
Yeah, it's fucking so crazy. I think about it all the time, especially when you're fucking old, and you're like. Like, what if I never went, or what if we never booked that show, or what if Dez ate an oyster that night, and got sick and never went out, like, just what if, like, my whole life would have been completely different, or even the musicians in that band, like Jeff Kendrick and John Miller and stuff. I met them through a mutual friend who came to a party once, and he said, "Oh, I know a guitar player. His name is Jeff. He goes to a different school. I could connect you guys." And I was like, "Sure." If that kid didn't go to that party, I would have never been moved to Santa Barbara, because I moved to Santa Barbara to continue music with them, and my whole life would have been completely different. It's just, it's not just music. It can be said for anything, but it's just fucking weird when you think about it. Some dude went to a party, changed my whole musical career.
Wow. So one of my favorite topics is Phil Anselmo. Obviously, you've got to tour with him in the past. Normally, I ask members of bands that have toured with Pantera, one good Pantera story, but you got anything with Phil from touring with Phil?
Touring with Phil? Well, let me think. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like there's so many of them. What was a good one? I remember, I think it was us. This was like Ozfest '04. To me, the best part about Phil is fucking one-liners. He's whatever he says just fucking makes the whole room fucking laugh. But one time, he's in 2004. He was still pretty young and he's a fucking scary dude,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was like Ozfest. I think it was like us, like Darkest Hour, maybe Every Time I Die. Just kind of like hanging out by some sort of fucking fence or something. And like he's just walking by himself, and he just doesn't look up. He's just got his shades on, doesn't look up or anything, and he just, as he's walking, he's like, "That's right, motherfuckers, shaking your fucking boots." Shaking your fucking boots. It's like those kind of things that you just remember forever. Like,
Yeah, he's definitely the king of the one-liner. And, just watching, growing up watching the Vulgar videos and things like that, and, all the smoke weed and, just drop acid, and there ain't no dragons coming out of this PA and stuff like that. I love Phil Anselmo.
Yeah. I when I was real young, I remember one time we went out to dinner. As soon as we sat, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going out to dinner with Phil. It's fucking crazy. And as soon as we sat down, he sat down across from me. And he slapped me across the face. and he goes, "You're not too fucking quick, are you?" Like, it's like, he kind of like, he could be abusive like that, but, I mean, granted, I don't think he'd do that to me now, but like, he was definitely kind of punking a kid who's like 23, who knows. Phil knew that, like, well, look at this kid. He's out to dinner with me,
He came on this show last month, and I grew up. Pantera is my all-time favorite band, and I saw them, I think, like 12 times as a kid, and I actually got to meet him when I was like 15, but he was like, that was probably not in a good era for him, so there's no way he remembered that. But so I'm a little nervous dialing the number, and as soon as he answered the phone, man, he was just like, "Talk to me, baby," and like he was just so engaging, and immediately, like, any kind of like nervousness I would have had talking to Phil on my show was out the door. Like, as soon as he answered the phone, it was great.
I know exactly what you mean. Like, I didn't speak. We just emailed him like a couple days ago, and sometimes you still you're like, it's probably wasting his time or something. He'll come right back, and he's down to get chatty. So he's a nice guy.
A couple guys in the band, obviously Doc Coyle, ex God Forbid, Vegas Nerve, Maytal, and all that stuff. What's your history with Doc?
Kind of funny, speaking of when I was talking about 2004, that kind of first experience on a large Ozfest with a bunch of bands that already know each other. That was my first experience with Doc. And God Forbid in general was one of the bands that didn't see us as some sort of traitor unit, with some fucking fake, like, new metal singer or something. So it was like, they were the first band that I connected with because they were nice to us. And they didn't like, "Oh yeah, you're in a band with that guy Dez, huh? Anyways, we're going to go back to the cool kids camp," And I always loved Doc for that. And it's the whole band. They didn't give a fuck who was in, they just treated me as a person, so that's when our relationship started. We did many tours. That's a lot. We did a couple tours. After that, many, many, many festivals, and then, but our relationship definitely cemented more when Doc moved out to California around 2013, and I would constantly send him the demos of what I was doing, and because I appreciate his opinion, and he would give it to me, and eventually, at some point, when Toomey joined, I had always been waiting for Doc to join the band. Waiting to ask if there was a spot. I didn't feel comfortable asking him because I figured he I had let him know that we need a guitar player, anyone you know of, let me know. So I wasn't going to ask him specifically because he knew that the spot was there, and if he wanted it, he would eventually take it. And when Tommy joined the band and he heard some of the vocal stuff, then he said, we were at the whiskey. He's like, man, if you ever want that slot filled, I'm still here, and I'd love to do it.
Nice.
And I was like, all right, cool.
You're in the band. I guess that takes you to Tommy. I mean, how did you and Tommy know each other?
I met Tommy. First time I met him was Devil Driver put a tour together, which was Snot was on the bill. I don't remember who else, but that was it. He was singing for Snot, and we didn't really talk too much the whole tour, but we definitely arm wrestled the last night of the tour, and that was fun.
Did you hit him with the over the top move?
I lost, but it was a fucking battle. It was, I'm not exaggerating. I think it was like around a minute and a half match that was back and forth. It was very somatic. We still talk about it.
Nice.
We've never gone at it since because we don't need to, but I don't want to lose again. But, and he lived in LA, and so we would see each other here and there. And some point I ran into him at the Viper Room, and that's when I started. I was like, all right, well, I'll throw you some songs and we'll see what's going on. And it didn't quite work at first. And then I sent him this one song, and I'll never forget it. I was having a bad trip on Molly, and
okay.
And I was in Vegas, and I was like with a bunch of people, and I was like, I rarely ever do drugs or ecstasy, and I was like, and I just didn't like it at all. Once again, I don't know why I did it. It was stupid. So I was like, I'm just gonna go back up to my hotel room, be by myself. And as soon as I got there, my email inbox clicked, and it was Tommy, who's did his own version on the song was "Learn to Live," and so I like, okay, maybe I'm all fucked up. Maybe I'll listen to this real quick, and I did, and I listened to it like 4 times, and it totally turned my trip around. And I was just like, yep, this guy's gonna be in the band. Like, I mean, because he really hit it out of the park. What he laid down was pretty much what you hear today.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yep. I was like, you can't really fucking beat that,
Yeah, and Tommy's got a great voice, man. I'm glad that he's kind of landed in a band like this because his voice, he needs to be heard. He has one of the better voices out there. So
yeah, yeah. So fucking thanks, Tommy. You made my fucking ecstasy trip a little bit better.
Nice, good job, Tommy. Tommy also brought my the Westfield Massacre came through town with Seven Dust. And I took my, I guess he was 11 at the time, year-old son with me. And Tommy pulled him up on stage and like gave him the mic. And my son was like, "If you like the Westfield Massacre, make some noise." And made his life. So Tommy's a good dude.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, Tommy's got a big heart. He's a very sweet man.
Cool, man. What was when's the album due? I didn't see that anywhere.
Yeah, still hasn't been announced. And the date is not solidified. That's why.
Oh, okay.
It is. Let's see. What's the date? It's the 7th. Yeah, it's most likely going to be mid to end April, and that's about all I can really state. But it's always been mid-April. That's what we've been shooting for. A couple loose ends we're tying up right now, and then like studio stuff, and then that's it. But the record's pretty much done. Except for we had to change a couple words the other day. Me and Doc got together yesterday. We already started writing for the second record. So
wow.
We're just going to keep the momentum going,
What would make you have to change words? Just
long story, but we'll probably tell that story at a different time.
All right. Yeah.
But there's some controversial stuff on the record. So, and we're doing a lot of things around one song that's, has sensitive subject matter. So, we're trying to get everything right,
So would you call this a super group? Is this a hardcore, like a new wave of American heavy metal super group?
I mean, if I was 10 years old, I'd call it a super group. But, I don't think super groups really exist. I don't think it's a good tag to put on the band. And then, let's say people call things super groups and, it's like, well, to be super, your previous acts had to be super. It's like, we're all just musicians that had been something that had somewhat of some notoriety and some success. But But the word super tends to mean like the best of the best, or the most fiscally successful and stuff. So it's like it's misleading, It's like we're just a group of dudes that I think we have our ear to the ground a bit more than people our age to communicate music that will communicate with a younger demographic. But other than that, we're just normal dudes getting it done,
Nice. Earlier you said that you were kind of in the outside looking into a lot of the kind of the Massachusetts bands, the Kill Switches and things like that. Did you grow up around them and know any of those guys? I mean, being from the area, or were you maybe from a different part of the state?
I was from a different part of the state. I was from Needham, Massachusetts, which is like about 8 miles outside of the city, where most of that stuff, from what I gather, was going on in Western Massachusetts, which is like 40 minutes away from the city. So no, I didn't go to high school with them, didn't know any of them. And we've all now since become friends, sort of with that basis, like, oh, you're from Massachusetts. Oh, cool. We all kind of have similar personalities. Anyone does from Massachusetts in some regards,
So, I mean, looking back, did you remember maybe hearing of those bands starting to come up or anything? Were you hearing anything where you were, or, you just didn't hear about it until you got to California later on?
Well, no, I got to California probably right when Killswitch got signed.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I remember Alive and Just Breathing. I remember the first time I heard it. I remember my friend, where I was when my friend showed it to me. I remember exactly where I was first time I heard it on Earth. I remember where I was when I heard Shadows Fall. I remember seeing Shadows Fall, the early days, stuff like that. Yeah, of course. Trying to think. The one band that I never fucking saw in their heyday that I always wanted to was Cave In. That band, Until Your Heart Stops, is out of everything that's come from Massachusetts around my time, age, and era, that's my favorite record. And Sandblack Church was a huge, that Which Does Not Kill Us record was really not their most popular, but that's my favorite record by them. A lot of that stuff was pretty influential to me, or just I liked it a lot. I'm not really sure it reflects in my music I make. Cave In a little bit, early Cave In, there was bands like Tree and fucking
I haven't
Honky Ball.
I haven't heard the name Tree in forever. That's awesome.
Yeah, no one has. Yeah, Tree, and like me and Brian from Shad's were talking about this the other night. We were just talking about Honky Ball. We were kind of going over some of those bands like Shed. We were just kind of just doing the
Do you remember? Do you remember this band type stuff?
Yeah, shows or whatever. Yeah, kind of funny.
So much fun. Well, you've got the big Five Finger Death Punch tour coming up about a month with those guys, Star Set and Shinedown. I actually saw the Five Finger Death Punch Shinedown tour here in Louisville, and be prepared to play for a lot of people because there were tons of people there. I'm still surprised. I've said it on this podcast 1,000 times, but I basically grew up with Chris Cale because he's from Lexington. I was from Nashville. Our bands traded shows all the time back in the 90s. And when he told me he was joining Five Finger Death Punch, I thought that they were like a big theater band, maybe like that club headliners you were talking about earlier, maybe before we started recording, like a place that would they would headline that. I didn't realize that they were Five Finger Death Punch, like the giant arena band. So it's so cool to see him out there doing that type stuff. But yeah, man, there's tons of people going out to that stuff.
Yeah, dude. I remember watching Five Fingers. Like, I've known Ivan since his Motor Grader days. Mm-hmm. And I remember him not approaching me, but talking to me. I'm starting a new band. Like, cool. Yeah. Like, I've watched that thing go from nothing to, I've been there the whole time, just kind of with my eye on it. And I slowly watched them starting off their shows and then like being on the same festival as us. And then slowly but surely like, oh, wow, that band's above us. Like, and it's just pretty rad. And now they're just a fucking force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, it's just I love them or hate them. They don't care, and they're not stopping.
Did you tell Ivan when he was, the Motor Grader coming out of Motor Grader? You're like, man, the second band never works out, and I'm sorry for you.
Well, I was not in that. We're talking that was like 2005. Like I was so still young in it, and I done thinking about it a second. I wouldn't know what it was like, and I couldn't fathom leaving Devil Driver at that point, so that'd be funny if I did say that. But he is a huge other like inspiration. Like, as I said when I was speaking with Doc before, Dez was a huge part of my inspiration. I was like, if that dude can do it, so can I. And like Ivan as well, just kind of like do it. Motor wasn't huge, but they did have some pretty big opportunities, and they did some big tours. And they, I remember at one point they had to cover a hit parader. I don't know if that meant anything at the time, but I just in general they were a known band, and it all fell apart. And he picked him, dust himself off, and he got with the right people, and he went hard. And look at him, he got it done. Fucking not easy, but
you were one of the main songwriters in Devil Driver, and this new band. How involved in the writing are you? How much of this, these Bad Wolves tunes that are coming out at the end of April are your babies?
A lot of them, and a lot of them also are. Tommy, Tommy has does a lot of the work. And Max, Karen, who unfortunately just really can't join the band. We would love to have him, but it was kind of like me and him started the band, and he's kind of like, he's just kind of like a guy that started the band with me, and we wrote a lot of it together. Doc came in when the record was done. Kyle came in when the record was done. And Chris never really, he's been in the band for a while, but he was so busy touring. He works for bands like Chainsmokers and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So now he's making that transition where he's putting that side of his tech life down and committing to this full time. So it was left to mainly me, Tommy, and Max to do a lot of the writing, And then next record is just going to continue on as a unit with just the five of us kind of writing,
Happy for all you guys. Like I said, even with Tommy and Doc both being on the podcast in the past, and just it's good to see you guys doing well. Or it's hard to even say you're doing well. You're starting to do well, and everything seems to be falling into place almost more than I've ever seen any other band fall into place. So, congratulations and good luck, man.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it does feel like I appreciate what you said too, because it's not like it's going so well. It seems like it's going to go away. We have this nice foundation where it's kind of like you can't ask for anything better. But there will be some hard times.
Yeah.
It's like it's going to be ups and downs, but we're off to the races better than I ever expected. And I appreciate you acknowledging that, recognizing it, and giving me a compliment there. Thank you.
Cool, man. We'll leave this with Learn to Live. You want to give me a little bit of background on the song?
Yeah, sure. That is entirely written by yours truly, musically. The background to the song was the ecstasy story I told with
Nice.
Tommy. Not being involved, he wasn't there, but Tommy has been sober for about 8 years now. But to be truthfully honest, I don't think I've said this. I wrote that song for the next Devil Driver record, and I was trying to when I was still in the band, and I was trying to just kind of change the sound up a little bit for the band. I was getting very stagnant creatively in that band. Towards the end, I felt like there wasn't much left for us to do, that we've done it all kind of in the one style that we were in. I felt a little pigeonholed in the band, so I was trying to do something that was a little bit more modern, but then I decided to quit, so I took my songs with me.
Yeah, coming with me.
Yeah, well, I think I had actually, I don't even remember if I had sent it to Dez yet or not. I don't know. I know I had showed it to Mike and the rest of the guys, though, and they were into it. But, that was a different time, and I ended up leaving. So, yeah, anything I did, I took with me,
Nice. All right, well, this is Bad Wolves with Learn to Live. John Boecklin, thanks for the time today, man.
All right, thank you so much, and call me on again. I'll be here.